Hello, hello students. Let us move on to our next class of drama. In our previous meet, dear students, we have seen how Miranda is very sad due to the shipwreck and crying of the passengers. Then Prospero consoles her by saying that no harm is done to any of the passengers and tells her to be attentive to hear their past story. So now we start from 40th line by Miranda's speech. Miranda says, "You have often begun to tell me what I am, but stopped and left me to a bootless inquisition, concluding, stay not yet." So Miranda says, "Father, you have often begun to tell me what I am means who I am, but stopped, but you changed your mind and left me to a bootless inquisition, and you left me into a futile questioning or without answering my question." Bootless means futile, and inquisition, questioning. So you left me without answering my question, concluding, saying, stay not yet, wait not yet. I will tell you later on. Then Prospero, the hour is now come. Now that hour of telling you about the past story has now come. The very minute bids thee, open thine ear, obey, and be attentive. Canst thou remember a time before we came unto this cell? I do not think thou canst, for then thou wast not out 3 years old. So Prospero says, the very minute bids, this very moment bids, requests you, open thine ear, to open your ear. Obey this and be attentive what I am saying. Canst thou remember? Can you remember a time before we came unto this cell? Can you remember anything before we came on this island? I do not think thou canst. I do not think that you can. For then thou wast not out 3 years old, because that time you were not more than 3 years old. You are not more than 3 years old. So I don't think that you remember anything how we came before we came on this island. Then Miranda, certainly sir, I can. So she says, yes, I can. Then Prospero is surprised. He says, by what? By any other house or person? Of anything the image, tell me that, hath kept with thy remembrance? So Prospero says, how? By any other house or person? Can you remember any house or person? Of anything the image, tell me that hath kept with thy remembrance. Remembrance means recollection. So tell me if you have the recollection of anything or of any image that is stored in your mind. Then Miranda says, it is far off and rather like a dream than an assurance that my remembrance warrants. Had I not 4 or 5 women once that tended me? So Miranda says, what I remember is rather far off and rather like a dream. It's like a dream, than an assurance, than a fact that my memory can recall. It just seems like a dream that my remembrance warrants or that my memory can recall or justify. Had I not 4 or 5 women? So, Father, had I not 4 or 5 women who once attended me? Then Prospero, thou hadst and more. Yes, you had more than that, Miranda. But how is it that this lives in thy mind? But how is it that you remember all of these things? What sayest thou else in the dark backward and abysm of time. So he says that, what says thou else? Can you remember? In the dark backward, from the dark chasm or depth of time. Abysm of time means depth of this depth of time. If you remember anything, can you remember anything? If thou rememberest aught before thou camest here, how thou camest here thou mayst. So he says that if you remember anything before you came here, then you may also remember how you came here. Then Miranda says, but that I do not. That I do not remember how we came here. Then Prospero says, 12 years since. 12 years ago, Miranda, 12 years ago, thy father was the Duke of Milan and a prince of power. So he says 12 years ago, Miranda, 12 years ago, your father was the Duke of Milan and had the authority of government. Then Miranda, sir, are not you my father? Then she asks very innocently, are you not my father? Then Prospero says, thy mother was a piece of virtue. So he says, your mother was a very virtuous lady. And she said, thou wast my daughter. And she told me that you are my daughter. And thy father was Duke of Milan. And your father was Duke of Milan. And his only heir, his only daughter, and princess of no lesser noble birth. Means you had no lesser noble birth. You are a noble, you were born in a noble family. So he assures her that I am only your father, as your mother told me. So today, till here, next meeting we will continue further.